Cool. There's plenty of updates, so I'm just going to quickly run through a few of them. Starting with editable query plans, and I think there was a question on chat as well about running query plans in a loop and whatnot. So I'm going to quickly show you what that means. So I have a customer support agent, and this is my favorite question as well. Who are the 5 most painful customers? And as usual, PromptQL starts off with creating a query plan to answer this question. And to define what painful means, it will come up with some factors here, number of support tickets, error rates, ticket response patterns, and whatnot, right? So, and let's say it had an error in the columns, it will recorrect itself to come up with the right column names and make the query again, right? And there you go. So you have the artifact of the top 5 challenging customers with the pain score. Now, if you look at the query plan here, one sec, probably went to the wrong one. Let me refresh this one. Yeah. So if you look at the query plan here, it has computed a pain score based on a few criteria. Now, let's say you are not happy with what the LLM came up with. You can just modify the query plan to say, hey, do not look at the total number of tickets, and just feel free to modify this and maybe add some other condition if you want. And you can just nudge PromptQL to say, hey, run this query plan instead with the updated criteria. And PromptQL will execute this query plan with a new set of rules, and will get the updated list of 5 customers and will recalculate the pain score as well. And essentially what's happening underneath is obviously there is a Python runtime, as Thiru mentioned, which will execute a query, and it will also make use of the LLM to do classification, and that's what's happening over here. So in this updated one, the pain score is updated without that total number of tickets that was there in the previous one. So you can keep nudging PromptQL with query plans to just tailor to your response. And that's one of the core updates that we've made, more of a UI experience as well. But the idea is that you can prompt PromptQL to get the right answer. Next up is we have a few AI primitives, the latest of them being the extract primitive, and that's pretty cool as well. So for example, in this, again, the customer support example, out of all ticket information that you have, I want to extract just the tech stack that's being mentioned in all of these support tickets. So I'm going to ask hey, in the last whatever number of support tickets, look at the ticket information and extract any tech stack tooling mentioned, right? And what PromptQL will do is it will use the extract primitive to look at the ticket information of each support ticket, and then it will try to extract the tech stack tooling criteria, so which will look at for databases or tools, tech tools that will be mentioned in the ticket, right? And again, it will recorrect if there are issues with the schema. Looks like there's a timestamp error with this particular one. Now, it will use the AI extract function to identify the tech stack, so we can look at how the response looks like. And here we can see that the technologies are created here. So you can see their name Postgres and the category be database. GraphQL here, there's Hasura here. So this gives you a good way to extract specific kinds of information from unstructured data. This is just ticket information, which is just raw text, right? So you could ask for specific categorization or extract specific tooling information from this one. Opens up lots of use cases. So this is pretty cool. And from execution of this, right? Going back to this, The extraction that's happening over here, it's also parallel, running in parallel. So if there are 10 items which are being extracted, there are 10 different items running in parallel, which makes this much faster to execute. Previously, we were doing this sequentially. So now this is done in parallel. So you can expand the number of items that you are processing for either classification or summarization or extraction. So all of the primitives will now run in parallel for faster execution, right? So that's what parallel runs. And of course, we are again constantly improving error handling and we've increased timeouts wherever possible. Next up is the program API endpoint. And for this, I have a example workflow to showcase where I have a GitHub repo, and I wanted to just automate labeling of issues as and when somebody creates an issue on this repo. I have a function which applies the labels to an issue, and it will just call the GitHub endpoint to apply the label automatically, right? But I want the LLM to classify the issue to say, hey, whether the issue is a bug or whether the issue is an enhancement and whatnot. So I'm going to make use of the LLM's ability. So here I have asked the LLM, asked PromptQL to say, hey, fetch the latest GitHub issue, classify the issue as bug or enhancement, and apply the label to the issue appropriately, right? PromptQL will come up with the query plan. It will trigger the function, and it will execute that, right? Now, this is pretty good, but this is also on a UI interface over here in the PromptQL Playground and Assistant, right? I want to automate this outside of this interface, at which point I want to integrate this with a GitHub webhook for my particular repo. So we have an API which will execute this PromptQL program. So the fundamental blocks of this execution is this Python program that the LLM generates, which will also have the SQL query and the other classification tasks that are run inside that, right? So we are essentially going to just replicate this. We have the API. This is the URL, and you have the Python code that you need to execute, and you pass in the right headers as well for the user and the artifacts as well. So I have this Google Cloud function which will be triggered whenever there is a GitHub issue created for the repo that I've configured. So this is just a webhook URL, and I have the PromptQL program API being configured here to be executed here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to demonstrate creation of issue and applying the labels automatically through this call. I'm going to copy one of the recent issues from our GraphQL engine repo. I'm going to create this issue. This is my personal test repo. To test this out, I'm going to wait a few seconds, and we can see that the label got added automatically for this issue. So the classification task ran in the background in the webhook, and PromptQL just applied the label automatically through the GitHub endpoint. And we can verify that with our webhooks. So the webhook was just called here. The labeling just happened for this cloud function. Cool. So this will open up use cases outside the PromptQL playground once you have access to an API. Awesome. So other smaller updates, we have a pre-configured LLM by default, so LLM key. So Hasura comes up with a built-in API key for the LLM. So instead of you bringing your own Anthropic or OpenAI keys, by default, we get started on a new project. You can choose to use Hasura, which is there by default. You get $10 worth of free credits, and beyond that, you can just add your billing details, and then you continue to use this seamlessly, right? So pretty good to get started for free, test out, evaluate before you can start your billing, right? So this is there by default for all new projects that are created. And just from a shareability angle, we have a couple of updates there, making a project public. For example, this GitHub example that I have, I have a simple README which will enable other people to try out this example. And I want to just share this project publicly, right? I can go to the PromptQL tab and just enable public PromptQL Playground, and I will get a PromptQL Playground URL, which is public. So anybody who has access to like a Hasura account or the Rivian account, they'll be able to access this and try out your version of the project. So this is pretty good for sharing across different people outside your own space. And to top it up, let's say you wanted to like share this particular thread publicly, right? So we have something called a share a thread, which will just share it outside to the outside world. There will be like a public link, and this will work without login. This will just appear as a snapshot for anybody to just visit, right? So you can now use this to share interesting conversations, threads, or you just want to share it to the outside world on social media about a particular cool example that you just created. So these two are on the sharing side. And of course, big update with the support for PromptQL on private DDN as well. So now you can fully Salesforce PromptQL set up on private DDN on your own on-prem and whatnot. So that was almost the update that I wanted to share. Maybe there's few small UI improvements that we can quickly go over as well. We now have the ability to like download an artifact as JSON and then just start a new thread with that artifact, right? So let's say, let me take a different example where I have like a larger thread. Let's say I want to just start a new thread, just these two artifacts, right? And you can just download these artifacts and start a new chat thread, and PromptQL will use these two artifacts in its Python runtime, and then you can now ask more questions as follow-up. This will be useful when your thread size becomes longer and it starts polluting the context size, and you just want to like focus on a particular artifact and just want to like have the conversation, right? So just branching out from a particular thread. But yeah, that's mostly what I wanted to share. Would love to see people share public projects and like interesting threads on social media.
Praveen, that was awesome. Thank you so much. That's my first time seeing the sharing feature for threads, and that's really exciting. For some reason in my head, I thought that you would actually have access to querying within the thread, so I'm glad to see that's not the case. So if you share a thread, it's a read-only. That's very cool. Yeah. I know we've done a lot of internal projects and kind of little hackathon and things like that for PromptQL. Just curious, have you shared any threads on social media or LinkedIn, anything like that we could take a look at possibly?
Yeah, I think there are like a couple of public data sets that we have, and would recommend people to also try out with some Kaggle or Hugging Face data sets, try out some queries, share interesting facts.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, man.